Thank you very much, Bill, and good evening. This evening, I would like to start by telling you about a patient that I had the opportunity to take care of several years ago. And unfortunately, the story I'm about to tell you is more common than you think. Mrs. Jones is a 37-year-old woman with two small children. She's the picture of health, in fact, a personal trainer. One day, she woke up and felt a lump in her breast. Shortly thereafter, she went to the doctor and received the very difficult diagnosis of breast cancer. She underwent a double mastectomy and several rounds of chemotherapy. Shortly after that, she and her family returned to the doctor, and she heard news that every cancer patient wants to hear, and that is, I think we got every cancer cell in the body, no cancer left, ecstatic. 2 weeks after that, the patient woke up from a sleep. She had a fever and felt tired. Her husband immediately noticed she did not look well and rushed her to the emergency room. She was unconscious by the time she reached the emergency room and had to be intubated, a tube down her throat, and rapidly brought to the intensive care unit. There, she was given a serious, life-threatening bacterial infection called septic shock. The next day, her family actually received worse news. That is, the bacteria she was infected with was a superbug that was resistant to just about every antibiotic known. The patient fought gallantly in the intensive care unit for a month, but eventually her organs shut down and she succumbed to her infection. The next day in the local newspaper, they highlighted Mrs. Jones and talked about the tragic story of a young woman with two children who died tragically of breast cancer. This story tells us several important points that I would like to focus on tonight. First and foremost, we need to start thinking about describing and performing research in infectious diseases differently. We need to understand more about the relationship between infection and a variety of other diseases. Only when we think about these things together can we solve this great problem. Now, the link between infection and cancer is strong. It's been estimated that individuals who have cancer suffer or die from infection about 33% of the time. That is a third of patients. And we're learning every year in science that the molecules that infectious agents produce actually can trigger a variety of cancers. We don't actually suffer and die from a bug entering our body. We suffer and die from activation of our immune system. The immune system is what fights infection. A consequence of that fighting is a concept called inflammation. Now, here's the key. In healthy individuals, inflammation is localized and limited. You fight the infection, then you're cured and you move on. But if you're a susceptible individual, for example, if you have a weakened immune system like our patient, or if you're elderly, or if you have another disease like diabetes mellitus, then the inflammation is greater and it's not localized. Chronic, unchecked inflammation can lead to a variety of other diseases, such as autoimmune diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, etc. This patient suffered from a superbug, and many believe that we are in the middle of a perfect storm with regard to infection. There are a growing number of superbugs in the world that are no longer susceptible to the drugs we have to treat infection. There's actually a growing number of susceptible people in the world to infection. In fact, the population in the world is aging, and elderly, as I've already stated, are more susceptible. And it's been estimated that since 1980, there's been a tripling of outbreaks of infectious diseases in the world, and of course, you all know we're currently in the midst of an influenza outbreak. At least to one economist, this has led to the supposition that by 2050, infectious diseases will be the #1 killer of humans in the world, to the excess cost to the economy of over $100 trillion. Okay, so why am I telling you this? What does this have to do with San Antonio? What does this have to do with Texas Biomed and me coming here? Well, I happen to be an infectious disease researcher, and as you've already heard, my area of research is tuberculosis. And we are currently building one of the strongest tuberculosis research teams in the country right here at Texas Biomed. But the challenge and the battle against infectious diseases is broader than any one disease. And so we need to have a greater response that's broader and bigger. We need to combat infectious diseases differently. Rather than reacting to a crisis from time to time, we need to develop a proactive agenda that allows us to work together more effectively and prevent the next outbreak from occurring. So what is the answer? The answer is team science. It's no longer adequate for an individual scientist to sit siloed in an individual laboratory solving one typically smaller problem at a time. We need to bring scientists together to solve bigger problems more creatively and with more innovation. At Texas Biomed, our goal is to bring scientists together into open shared laboratory space, so-called collaboratory space. We're redefining our value system at Texas Biomed to a strong commitment to collaboration and team science. We're bringing virologists together with immunologists. We're bringing in data scientists, systems biologists, et cetera, to solve problems creatively. So for example, we're not just interested in why a bug or how a bug enters the body, but we're interested in bringing new technology to, for example, use innovative live animal models to identify sites of infection. And within those sites of infection, gene targets. And those gene targets can serve as the platforms for new diagnostics, therapies, and vaccines. Now, the idea of team science goes beyond scientists and beyond the bench. It actually goes into the private sector. It's partnering with businesses and private individuals. Together, we can develop strategies to find new resources for biomedical research, which are extremely important, new technologies, and new ideas to fuel the innovation. Today, more than ever, private individuals are getting into the game of biomedical research. They're identifying new ways of fundraising, new educational programs, and even partnering with scientists to be able to develop new strategies to combat what I believe to be the most important and challenging threat to human health, that is infectious diseases. So let's come back to the story of our patient who was identified in the local newspaper as having died of breast cancer. Clearly, we need to educate and provide more public awareness for the problem of infectious diseases and its relationship to other diseases. This is where all of you come in. Education and support become vital if we're going to combat this challenge of infectious diseases, because after all, not a single one of us in this room or in the world is spared some type of infection in their lifetime. Together, we can truly change the world to improve public health. Thank you very much.